We are live on Facebook too, and we are live on Zoom. So everyone who's calling in, I give you guys all a few minutes to join us. Obviously, as always, welcome to the place. Um, it's a beautiful sunny day here in Dallas. I don't know how it is at the rest of the world, but you know, why not once in a while also talk about the weather, right? We talk about a lot of other things nowadays, but you know, it's not bad to once in a while just talk about the weather. If you call from somewhere outside the Dallas area, you might want to let us know how the weather is at your place. Completely meaningless, but the weather is actually pretty important. And if you live in somewhere like me, like in Dallas, and that's probably true for many places in the world, but specifically when I moved to Dallas, I just found out how the weather can be of a big influence. So let me fill up the first minutes talking to you about the weather. Right, I have a good friend in the Netherlands. By the way, he is I don't know if that's a correct word, but I call him the weatherman, and so he knows a lot about weather. I don't know so much about weather, but what I noticed here in Dallas, for instance, we have a saying: if you don't if you don't like the weather, just wait an hour, right? Because it truly can change here within an hour, and it's always surprised me, and I've been here already like almost like 15 years or so, but it always surprised me how much the temperature could either drop or rise within the matter of hours, and sometimes even within the hour. It's and it happens during the summer, the winter. It's crazy. Not to talk about the tornadoes. We have not so much influence of the hurricanes. That's always in the summer season, stuff like that, but it could be pretty rough out here weather-wise. So it's kind of a interesting as well. Has nothing to do with the place. I'm just filling up filling up time a little bit to give people just that first 5 minutes to log in. Um, if you're following us on Facebook Live, welcome there too. I wrote it down here. Hello to all of you. And if you're following us right here in Zoom, then and you still want to do that, you can do that. Find us at the place, and then you click on the link, join us in Zoom, and then you can actually be part of the discussion as well. All right. If not, then I will start today. Today the topic is about what to do and how do you know when you are called to serve. Now, it was a little bit hard for me actually to put this topic um, on to me when I felt inspired to do this topic, because to be honest, I always have a little bit problem when I get that feeling to serve. But I have a well, maybe it's not a life motto, but I definitely have a company's motto, and I think we should put our life in service of other people, because if you don't do that, then what is life about altogether, right? You have to think about it for a little bit. But I must honestly say that, let me start with that, is that I always felt a little bit, I'm not sure if it's a shame or a hesitation, but if people say you need to serve, like serve maybe in a church or serve in another way, I always feel a little bit hesitant, right? And I always feel at the same time a little bit ashamed that I am I not a good person then, that I don't want to do things for other people? Because I do believe that I do. I do believe that I let my life lead by what other people want. But at the same time, there is some sort of a yuckiness in myself, some sort of a weirdness in myself when I hear that word serve, that that I feel a little bit hesitant to talk about it, or stuff like that. And it's strange, because if you look at my work and the things that are in my life, I think I try to do at least some good to other people. I mean, I cannot be the judge of that, clearly, that other people should be the judge of that. But I wanted to bring that forward because it's part of the way how I coach, and what coaching is about, at least in my thing, is also to look mostly in yourself and see where things like shame or guilt or all the other things, they come up, and not to beat myself up over it, but I'm just telling you honestly that I sometimes have a little bit a hard time, right? So if you know anything about Dallas, besides that it is a pretty big city here in the north part of Texas, you know, we're also in the middle of the Bible Belt. And don't immediately turn off your camera and stuff, because yeah, I'm going to talk a little bit about church, but you know, so don't send me any hate mails or something like that, because you know, I just want to tell you something about this. So this whole area is Dallas is in the smack in the middle of the Bible Belt, and it goes through all these southern states, and it's a real word, but we say that because there are so many churches in here. And when I came down to Dallas many years ago, and then 15 years ago I decided to live here, I was literally surprised how many churches. There's literally a church here in every corner of the street. Now, I'm coming from the Netherlands, so you can think weird things about these things, and I definitely had to form my thoughts about what that meant here, right? That means, you know, on a Sunday morning, on average Sunday morning, most people are in church here. Yeah, it could be any church, could be Catholic church, could be Protestant church, could be, you know, Baptist church. I mean, there are so many types of churches that I didn't even know they were, right? I grew up in the Netherlands. We basically had three. You either were Catholic, you were Protestant, or you're Reformed, or nothing at all. Nowadays, of course, you have mosque, you have all these kind of things, and those things are called denominations, right? We have many, many, many of them. You know, if you can't find your own church, maybe church is not your thing, and that's a good thing too, by the way. But the reason why I say that, if you go to church, I go to a church here right around the corner, we often talk about serve, and we mean just, you know, helping people to park their car or something, or it could be helping people to find a seat in church. That is serving people, right? It doesn't have to be that complicated, actually. And I thought about serving people was always a very complicated thing to do, right? So so serving people is maybe I should, you know, or that's what I was thinking years ago. Maybe I should think slightly different about it, what it means to be serving people. And then the other thing that I found out in talking and thinking about these things is that serving people and leading people, they are not. It's not a synonym, but they are often mentioned in the same breath of air. So think about that for a moment, right? Serving people and leading people are often called in the same breath of air. And I thought it was kind of weird, because I thought serving has something to do with being humble, maybe almost being at the lower ends of the food chains. And so I was completely messed up in my thinking about that, right? Actually, to serve people well, you also have to lead well. Yeah, so I want you to think about it for a moment. To serve people well, you actually have to lead well. And I started to read more and more about this. That process started a little bit longer than I'm talking right now. But when I started to read biographies, I started to find out that the strongest leaders that you can read about, and whether you agree with them or not, that doesn't really matter. But let me take, for instance, Nelson Mandela, or some other people, maybe some presidents of the United States that you admired, maybe some politicians in your own country that you admired, or other people. It doesn't have to be in that area. It could be just the leader in your company. They actually turn out to best serving people in the world. So there is definitely a connection between leading and surfing. And I thought that's an interesting take about it. Now, if we think about leading, then we often think about that we have to make a promotion in our life, right? So we are here in our career, right? And we have to go there. We have to go up in our life to serve. And actually, you know, as an official promotion, like, you know, you were like, I don't know, a manager, and now you're a director or something like that, right? And that turned out to be actually also something that I had a little bit wrong in my mind. And since I have all these wrong conceptions in my mind, no wonder that I was a little bit shamed, and you know, I felt a little bit weird about serving, because leading people has nothing to do with a promotion, right? The true leader comes from within yourself. Does that make sense? Right? You have to find that in yourself. And if you talk to these leaders that are driven by serving other people, they often will tell you, and it sounds maybe in the beginning like a fluff story, but they often will tell you that they felt some sort of a calling, right? And calling is not only used in a religious sense of a word. I'm calling to believe in something like a deity. So it just could be calling to do that for something else. And sometimes that happens in the moment. You see something and you feel that you need to help that person. Well, obviously you need to do that. That's a calling to serve. Other people feel that in a different way. So then I started to look at, maybe it's a little bit more complex than I thought it was. So surfing in that way, Serving. Sorry for my bad pronunciation. If you were talking that I was talking about surfing on the waves of things, right? Because of my pronunciation, then you are hugely mistaken. I'm talking about serving as serving other people, not being on a surfboard in the ocean, right? Do you see my surfboard? That's not what it is. All right, so that was my maybe one and only joke that I have right here at the place. If you just logged in at Facebook Live or in Zoom, then we're talking today about serving other people and the call to serve, what that means. And I just made a statement a little while ago that serving other people has a lot to do with leadership, and leadership has nothing to do with being promoted to a certain level in a company or in society, politically, or what have you not. Does that make sense? And then what we were really talking about is about surfing comes within, and sometimes that you have a calling in the moment. You see someone on the street who needs some help and you feel that you need to help that person. And in other cases, you have to do that because you feel a larger calling to serve people. And many leaders, and I'm talking about leaders so often because often you can read about them, and I'm sure there are a lot of people that are served really well. We just cannot read so much about them either on the internet or in a book that we can find in the library or in Barnes and Nobles or what have you not. So that's why I talk about leaders a lot, because we can read a lot about them. But there are many other leaders. So let me walk you a little bit through where you can all serve, and hopefully you all are doing that already, which would be great then, right? So, so first of all, find it somewhere really close by. And what is closer by than serving your own family, right? So that's easy. If you are if you are at home and you can do something for your siblings, or if you have kids of your own, that's a form of serving. And you can literally put yourself, think about it, do I put myself in the service of that other person? Now, if you're a dad, you have a certain role, and if you're a mom, you have a certain role, and if you're a kid, it's a certain role. But if you really look at it from the need of that other person, which you now come very closely to a definition of serving, if you look at it and act from the need of the other person, that's maybe your most simple way of defining what service means, right? So it's not always what is defined in your job description. And if you work at a company, then you have an official job description. But think about this. Can you make your job description for life, right? Can you make a live job description? Now I had several roles. I had many roles, by the way, in corporate. So I had many job descriptions. In fact, a few weeks ago, someone asked me to send my resume to some sort of an automated system, and they look at, not that I'm looking for a job. So if you want to hire me, I'm sorry, I'm not for hire, but I did that just to find out what that system was, and they just look through your resume. And they rank all these things, and some things get higher ranked and other things get lower ranked. And so they looked at all this little description that I had of the jobs that I did. And apparently we can rank those things, right? And there's nothing wrong with it. What I want to say is they rank it in such a way that someone who looks at it can see what value you could have to that company, right? So the value that you could have for maybe the job that they are offering. Now, that's like a nice way of looking at things, right? What if I could define the value that I could have for other people? And some people like myself got really anxious when I think about it. But what if I'm not good enough? You know, a lot of these fears that we have about ourselves suddenly come in, and I noticed that in myself. And because I have those fears, I don't show up strongly to serve to the other person, and I just over taught it a lot. I mean, that's a while ago, but you know, I sometimes notice that I still have these things actually to write this what I'm talking to about right now. I actually felt that I still have those things in me, so maybe I need to do a little bit more work in myself. But I definitely don't have to be ready with myself to start serving other people, because it could be in a family as easy as you have younger kids as reading a story to your kids, or once in a while prepare a meal, or maybe every day. I love to cook, so I maybe prepare a meal every day. So that's a good way of serving too, right? So it doesn't have to be that complicated. And when you're at home, you don't think about these things. But you know, maybe cooking is a big problem for you, and you get a lot of fear. What happens if I ruin the food, or whatever that is? But sometimes that's it. And I noticed when I started to coach, it is not only that you cannot achieve what you want to achieve when you have all these fears and worries and stuff in you, but what's more importantly is you cannot show up for other people either when your life is led by fears and doubts, and you not know exactly what you need to do. Does that make sense? So one of the things that I think is essential in everyone's life is how we can serve other people. Now, if I am too caught up by fears and doubts and what have you not, it's not only that I cannot achieve my own goals, and in the place we talk about achieving your own goals and all that kind of stuff, but maybe this talk should be, you know, be a little bit more often on the agenda. You can also not show up for other people either in the right way, and that's maybe even more important. So if you feel you have that, you know, reach out to other people to help you with those fears and doubts. But first of all, I also want to make sure that you understand it doesn't have to be that complicated. Does that make sense? Start first in your own environment, like your family, and you can actually serve other people really well. All right. To serve our company, just hold on a little bit. That I browse through this. All right, so then of course, you know, if you are in Dallas and I know in the Netherlands, and maybe it's not that complicated at all. In the Netherlands, it sounded always very complicated to me, but here in Dallas, it's very easy actually to find a volunteer job and do that. And you might think, man, you know, it depends a little bit what culture you're from. I mean, that's a hard thing to do. It's actually not here in the United States, at least where I live. It's a very common thing to do volunteer work. And but I still, here again, I started to notice in myself that I have a hard time to do these things, to be honest. I want to do the things on my own. I offer my services like this, the place, for free. And I thought, okay, that's a way to serve people. At least some people look at me every week, so they probably like it and get something out of it. So I found my way how to serve communities, right? But it could also be much simpler, and I think often that I need to do that too. Maybe it's just helping the neighbors if they're old, you know, to put out the trash. Of course, we're now in a shelter in place, so it's a little bit harder to do these things. But there are a lot of people who need more help. So at the start of the shelter in place, there were literally moms here, and they went around the neighborhood and they put all sticky notes at our doors and say, hey, if you ever need some groceries and you're not able to get it yourself, just let us know and we'll get you some groceries, right? So I mean, that's a simple thing to do. We often have to go to the groceries ourselves as well, and we know now that a lot of people can do that, and so we can help them out. Doesn't have to be that complicated at all. We sometimes overcomplicated these things. And then before the shelter down, when I was teaching dance, there was this young man. He and his girlfriend are going to get married, and they asked me and us to make a dance for them. So that's a great thing to do. So that in itself, there is a little bit of service in there, but it's kind of a paid for service, but it's still service. But then after a few lessons, he started to look me up at the internet and see what I was doing and what I wrote about and stuff like that. And he stopped me after the lesson. He said, "Hey, Jean, can I talk to you for a moment?" I said, "Sure." I said, "Well, since I left high school," and he's now college degree, has a good job and what have you not. And he said to me, "It's a while ago since actually, since high school, I didn't do any volunteer work." Now, something hit me right there immediately because I come from a slightly different culture. It's very common here for high school students to do some volunteer work. Actually, sometimes they get credit for it. Whether they do it for the credits or not doesn't really matter, right? But they do it anyhow, and often they do that through a church or another organization. But it's wonderful, beautiful that they do that. But what really struck me, it's actually, I got a little bit emotional from it, is that he said, "I read about your cause, and it would just be a great honor to do volunteer work in your company, no matter what it is." He said, "As long as I can do it, obviously." And I thought, what a nice way to do that, right? He just met me as a dance teacher. He read about me to do that, and he just felt that calling. He said, I am behind the cause that you are doing. I know you now as a person, and I will volunteer in your company if there is such an opportunity. I had to think about it. That doesn't really matter how that further develops. Maybe I tell you about that later. But you could clearly see that came from that. For me, I'm a little bit an old dude. That came from this young man's heart. Beautiful, beautiful done, right? To serve the community. It could be, coming from so many places, and it could be so much easier, and especially now in COVID-19 situation, and in the US we call that shelter in place, where we have to stay home. There are maybe more opportunities than you think to serve other people. Now, if you work at a company, you know, and we call that customer service, right? We have a special department that is called customer service. Now, that's kind of always struck me as a little bit odd, right? Because I studied marketing, and actually I think, man, should we not always serve our customers? So we have one department that is called customer service. But I hope none of you think that only the people in that department are the ones that have to serve our customers, because in the end of the day, the company only exists by the grace of your customers, right? And everyone that works for me in our company, I hope, and if you listen to this on on Facebook, then I hope you do understand that. By the way, I talk about that in every meeting that we have. It is, we are only there by the grace of our customers. Does that make sense? Yeah, you get paid for your work as I get paid, and as you all get paid if you work for a company. But in the end of the day, if you don't see it that way, you will cut yourself short. Actually, you will cut the company short, you will cut yourself short, and of course you will cut your customer short. So in the end of the day, talking about serving, you don't serve yourself really well. It's sometimes a mindset that we forget, right? Because one of my first job was working at a slaughterhouse, and it was really my first job. I worked in the office, and I was just doing a lot of stuff to get the meat exported. It was a little bit of a tedious job, not super interesting. The colleagues were very interesting, but once in a while, it was just a startup company. Once in a while, we actually had to help out just in the slaughterhouse. I was really young, and it was right after high school. I didn't want to go to college yet, so that's the job that I had to take. And I didn't care, to be honest. I loved it. I loved the colleagues. It was all kind of new things, but I had to help out in the slaughterhouse. Now, while I was, doing these things with these animals, I was not immediately thinking about serving our customers, to be honest. Like, look at my face. I mean, I'm just still a little bit grossed out by the work that I had to do there. And but we did it anyhow. So it was not really on my mind. We were very focused and maybe sometimes even kind of occupied by the work that we had to do without always thinking about what is the biggest. Can I write it like this? What is the biggest why we do these things, right? Why do we why do we why do we do these things? And the why is always found in our customers if you have a company. Does that make sense? Right? So and that is the way. So how can we serve from the role that you have in wherever you are, in what company you are, how can you best serve those people, right? Okay, so that's one way. That's one way to say. Now, if you are in the position of you're a supervisor, you're a manager, you're a director, you're a vice president, and many layers in between, or maybe you are a business owner like myself, then you can also say, hey, um, if I want my employees to serve my customers or our customers, how can I then best serve my employees? In other words, maybe the customer is not always the end customer. Maybe the customer is also the people that you have in your team. You know, I know we hired those people, but that doesn't mean that we don't serve them, right? You know, we want them and put them in such a place that they can do their work best and with the most joy as possible, right? That's also a way of serving people. So you can ask yourself in, hey, how can I serve my employees, right? In this case, I thought a lot about that, and I hope we're doing well, by the way. But you don't have to ask me, of course. Or you should not ask me what I do that well. You need to ask the people that are working in our company. Now, surfing in the end, right? There are two more things that I want to address. Has something to do with comes from from the inside out, right? You know, you need to find your heart in it, and if you don't have a heart to serve, maybe you need to think about that a lot, right? And if you read my book about the five energies, then I call that a sense of being. Do you have a sense of being that you can actually mean something for them? And the beginning is maybe hard, but you know, every time that I do it, and I must say I always find it hard to do that, in many cases at least. There's so much reward that you get from it, right? If you do it for that reward, it's not a good thing, but I'm just holding this like something in front of you. It might be hard to do, but you actually will feel in that there is so much reward when you actually start to serve people. And it's not always, you know, going out there and helping elderly people to do their grocery and all kind of stuff. I really, really admire people who do that, by the way. That's not directly my calling, to be honest, but you know, if we can, we should do that. But and there are people that whether or no whether the, you know, that's how I talked about, you know, it could be raining, it could be blazing hot in Dallas, and there are always people helping out at our church to you know, to guide the traffic and stuff like that, because it could be pretty busy. Now you could be against the church, that's all up to you, but you still should admire those people that volunteer their time, right? They give their time in service of other people, and that's mostly what it is, right? So it's always a little bit of a calling that comes from inside. At least that's what some people want to believe. Now, here is what I believe. Sometimes you don't have that calling. Does that mean you don't need to serve? I think you always need to do that. Then just put that, you know, as today as something on your list saying, hey, you know, might not immediately feel that calling. I don't know what to do and how to do it, but I want to do it, right? Because this is one of the things that I believe it is actually really good for you in society. It will make some changes in you that you might not predict if you don't. So if you put that in your mind, it might help you. Okay, so that's what's the place is about a little bit as well, right? Hope you don't hang up. and still stay with us. I have a couple of things more to say about serving other people. All right. Now, then you can say, hey, some people, they just feel they have a higher calling, and they want to be part, or sometimes they want to be the driver of change. And it could be a change in the community, there could be a change in your family, and it could be even have a bigger aspiration in there. And you see that sometimes. I read a few weeks ago, or well, maybe it's a couple of months ago, where a young person actually started uh, to change the environment by coming up with ideas how to get plastics out of the ocean, because he was very triggered by the amount of plastic in the ocean. And that was her way, and she had a huge impact, by the way, on the community and the environment. So that's not a small thing. I think she started this when she was 17, and she has a huge amount of funding that she get, and technologies at some point in time was involved. People started to invent things to help her out, and all kind of things. And I was reading up about these things, because for some reason, since a few years, I'm a little bit triggered by the fact that we use too much plastic and plastic straws, and basically one of the things that I saw there is floating in the Caribbean, like an island of plastic, almost at the size of Texas. And if you know about Texas, it's a really, really big state. Actually, it's the second biggest state of the United States. And if you're listening to me right now and you're not from the United States, you can type in right now, what do you think is the biggest state of the United States? Nothing to do with this, with what I'm talking right now. It's just a nice trivia, right? So I could easily see why people are triggered by those kind of things. And some people are just, getting a little bit upset about it, talk to other people, but they don't do anything about it. They didn't realize that they actually, when they got upset about it, that is actually a calling. That is a calling. That is, do something about it. So Tony Robbins always says, if you don't put your decisions, if you don't put your decisions into massive action, all those decisions are completely meaningless. So the fact that you got emotionally triggered by the sight of all that plastic, that is what a calling is. Every emotional trigger, and if you see it negative or positive, then you can figure out what that means. Sometimes people might have a little urge to start to gossip about it, but the intent of it could be something completely different. That's what I want you to think about mostly today, is what is the emotional trigger when you see these things, right? So that points in the direction of maybe you are called to serve for a bigger change in either your close environment, or maybe even as this young girl, well, actually she was from the Netherlands, is in the world. Now you don't have to do that all, right? It's, I mean, I sometimes feel that I'm a little bit too much occupied, but always thinking about, what can I mean for the world? And because of that, I missed so many opportunities to do the smaller changes that I could do for my community, or even for my close friends and family, right? So that is a little bit, I figured it out later as it is. So I was very occupied, for instance, to write a book about it, and it became a bestseller. So I do have an impact on the world. I'm very proud of it too, and definitely of the people that have supported me in doing so. But it doesn't always have to be like that, and a lot of people don't want it to be like that, and they do very humble serving, and you never hear of those people at all in the media or in the books or whatever. But I definitely want to do a shout out to those people today that are then put themselves, on the line. So we have a lot of people in first line serving, medical people who do that today. We see a lot about it. Maybe this is a good time to have a little bit of awakening that it's not only those people. You can still serve every day, even if you have to work from home. So that's a little bit what I'm talking about. Strangely enough, I know these are not the most popular things to talk about. I don't know why that is, but it is absolutely the truth. We never see a lot of tractions where we make posts on the internet about these kind of things, and people think it's fluff, but I honestly mean it. If I can change only one heart today, But if all of you who are on Facebook Live would, just write your own idea about what serving means and then share this post, because these are the things maybe we need to address a little bit more in the place, right? And with all the kudos and accolades and all the honors and gratitude that we have there for people that serve in the first line, there is many things that other people can do as well. So anyhow, that was what it means when you get called to serve, right? Always I go a little bit back to it, right? There are many layers you can do it. You can do it at home. You can do it in your community. Definitely think about it when you have work in any company. Most of us have that. There is always a customer that we serve, right? And any company, doesn't really matter what company it is, only exists by the grace of their customers, right? And if you're in a leadership position, maybe think about how you can serve your team instead of how your team is going to work for you. It's the other way around, right? Some of my bigger mentors in the companies that I work for always have held that above my head. As a leader of a team, you're always in the service of the team, not the other way around. If you're like me, even if it's on a small scale business owner, then how can I serve my employees, right? So a lot of employees think about, oh, I need to serve their boss. No, they need to serve, in my mind, my customers, right? And then, okay, if they make me, then they make me happy, right? But at the same time, on that same token, as a leader of my own company, I need to think a lot about, and probably I can do that better, how to serve people that work for me. And then last but not least, we always say, serving and the call to serve comes within. How do you recognize that? That's often an emotional trigger. I gave you this example of this 17-year-old Dutch girl who was triggered about the amount of plastic in the ocean, and that triggered her. She did something about it. A lot of people get triggered by it, but they just get angry and say, oh, what an outrage of this. I'll do something about it, right? And if you don't know how to do something about it, talk to people who might help you to do something about it, right? So came back to that thing that I use in so many ways, actually. Thank you, Tony. Is, any decision, any emotional trigger that is not followed up by any action is kind of meaningless, right? And so in the place we talk a lot about overcoming your own fears, overcoming your own doubts, how to become more successful in life. But if success is only defined by your personal success, maybe it should stop there. I noticed in myself that my own fears and doubts actually sometimes stop me to serve other people. And so I have some work to do. There still do, and I'm sure that is true for a lot of you as well. If you have overcome that and you serve people really well, then I want to thank you for that service, obviously. And with that, I want to say, if you have a question at Facebook, just quickly type that in. If not, then I'll say goodbye to you on the people on Facebook. Follow us on the place as always, right? We have a special webpage. We have a special Facebook group called The Place. We have a newsletter that you can sign up for. Last thing that I want to say, last week we also published a free course for everyone. You don't have to be a member of the place. You don't have to be a member of Schandorf Coaching. It's free for everyone. If you've seen it already, you think, it can help other people, forward it too. There's no string attached, it's one way how we believe we could serve. And that is, finding your new normal in the COVID-19 situation. So do that too. That's a very small thing that you can do to serve someone else. If you say, hey man, I cope with COVID-19 situation really well, but I know someone who could actually use that advice and that help and those tips, send that free course. There is no string attached. I'm seriously about it. We made that, and that was our way of serving other people in this situation, right? So that was a lot of talking in 45 minutes. I thank you for your attention. As always, I continue the discussion a little bit with the people on Zoom. So we'll see you there if you are there, and if not, then I'll say goodbye to everyone on Facebook and hope to see you next time in The Place.